Hey, what's up everyone? Vegetarian Zombie here, and welcome back to another episode in Beginning C# with Unity. In the last episode, you learned about methods. In this episode, you'll learn about something method adjacent known as properties. Properties give you the flexibility of methods and helps you out with something known as encapsulation. Before we start, my name is Vegetarian Zombie, and I run this YouTube channel as well as jesner.com. If you enjoy these videos and want to see more, feel free to subscribe to this channel. You can also directly support me by signing up to my Patreon. By subscribing to my Patreon, you will be able to download these videos ad-free over at jesner.com and support what I do. Okay, let's talk encapsulation. It's a pretty critical concept when writing code. When defining variables on your objects, you really want to have public access to that variable. Remember, a variable represents an object state. Direct access to the state can break an object. Imagine you had a car object and a speed variable. Your player is driving 60 miles per hour. Imagine someone accessing it and changing it to 0, or 10,000, or -30. This could break everything. To prevent this, you set the variable to private, and then you provide public getters and setters. These are just methods that allow access to the variables. With getters and setters, you can put validation logic to make sure your state isn't corrupted by bad values. It's a good practice to use methods to read and write to your variables. Unfortunately, writing getters and setters is tedious, especially when you have lots of variables. It means lots of boilerplate code. Thankfully, there is another way. Properties allow you to provide these getters and setters without having to write any code. It's written for you in the background. You define a property like a regular variable. You set an access modifier, a type, and a name. You put curly braces followed by a get, set, or both. When you get, you can read the variable. With set, you can write to the variable. By adding both, your variable can be read and written to. You can also provide access modifiers such as public get and private set. This allows the variable to be read by outside the object, but you can set it inside the object. Things get interesting when you want to provide your own implementation. Imagine we have a leaderboard object that contains all the scores for all the players. You can create an average property. In the getter, you simply average all the existing scores and return a value. There's no setter to set the value, but it behaves like a regular variable. Of course, without a setter, you can't set a value to it. Creating a setter implementation means creating a backing variable. This is a private variable. You'll often see it marked with an underscore. You write a setter very much like a getter, except the value you are referencing is called value. Here you can write your own validation logic on it. Okay, to get started, we're going to create a bad guy class. This class will have a point value and a bonus. First, create a bad guy script in Unity. Next, open it in your code editor. Delete the existing class. Now we'll define the class. That's our class. It's super small and directly to the point. Back in My Objects, you can create a new bad guy. Do the following in show message. Yet the variables are directly exposed, which, as you know, is a bad idea. Thankfully, we can change these directly to properties. Switch back to the bad guy class and update it to the following. With a simple code change, you protected your backing variable and you didn't create any compile errors. Now let's say you want to put some validation logic on your point value. First, create a backing private variable. Now let's create a setter. This ensures there is no negative numbers passed into this property. Now for the getter. Again, you made some changes, made your code stronger, and your changes didn't break anything. That's a win win win. Okay, one last thing before the challenge. Open up My Objects, create a variable, and set it to public. Now save and switch back to Unity. Select the text game object in the canvas, and there's your variable. Awesome. You can expose variables in the inspector, but as you learned, public variables can be dangerous. Thankfully, we can use properties mixed with an attribute. An attribute is a C# feature that allows you to add metadata to your code. This is an advanced feature that is like calling functions on your code itself. In Unity, you use them a lot. Attributes go in braces. You put it exactly over the property or method. Next is the attribute name. In this case, we are calling serialize field. Now we can access the private variable in the inspector. This is useful so you can keep all your variables private. We can also access properties in the inspector as well. Update it to the following. Now save and head over to the inspector. You'll find the gold pieces field in the inspector. This works the same, but with properties. Moving forward, you should never set public variables by default. Always defer to private variables and use attributes to expose them to the editor. Now it's time to put your property knowledge to the test. I want you to create a property person class. It should have a first name and last name. Both should have getters and setters. It should have a field called full name. This should only contain a getter that returns the full name of a person. Print it out on the screen. Pause the video and try it out. How'd that go for you? Let's give it a whirl. First, you define your class. Now the properties. These are pretty straightforward. You set up your first name and your last name. Now for the full name. With that, the property person is all set up. return back to my objects and add the following to show message. Now save. Return to Unity, run your game. Press the button, and you should see your name on the screen. Well done.